going to go through the ICC Fire Codes and Standards examination today that applies to the Certified Fire Marshal. There's 5 standards associated with this test: NFPA 921, the International Fire Code, the Special Inspection Manual, the Fire and Life Safety Educator, and the International Building Code. I'm literally giving you the answers for at least 80% of the questions you're going to see. So if you go to iccsafe.org and then search for the Fire Codes and Standards test, what will come up is the FC test for the Certified Fire Marshal. Now, the FC test is one of 3 required tests for the CFM, Certified Fire Marshal. The other 2 are the legal and building department management tests. And I have practice exams and a curriculum I've developed for that, and I'll share with you in sometime in the future. Let's look at the references, though. They specify the 2018 Special Inspection Manual and the 2021 versions of the IBC and IFC, 2017 of 921, and the 3rd edition of the IFSTA Fire and Life Safety Educator. And these are the editions that I used for this test. So I'm going to go through not just the tests. So let me show you the online curriculum that was developed. So this is simply a website put together. I put together a while ago for fire protection engineers. I saw a weakness based on the Coconut Grove Station nightclub, ghost ship warehouse fires. These are the pictures of those fires there, as well as many others where you had certified inspectors going in and they missed stuff. So that's why I put this together, to help people, train them so they could be better inspectors. And as part of this, I've added a few different certification exams to this website. Most recently, in the last month or so, residential energy inspector, commercial electrical inspector, commercial mechanical inspector, now commercial fire or certified fire marshal, fire codes and standards exams. Now, how this works, look, I'm not going to put a lot of time into this. I'm just doing this as a public service. I'm giving you the questions right here. I'm giving you the answers, and I'm giving the reference, as well as the book, in this case, the 2018 Special Inspector Manual. So what I'm getting at is you're going to have flaws in this. This is far from being perfect. This particular example exam, this is 1 of 5. This is just for the SIM, Special Inspector Manual. But as you can see, the multiple choice questions or answers, they're not populated with all 4, just 1 in most cases. Some obviously not. In some situations, I just didn't, there's bugs. I used a script, wrote a script that expected specific inputs just to save myself some time, and I made some mistakes in terms of, the format of the inputs. So there's going to be mistakes on this, like this one, for instance. There's no answer associated with it. I don't remember what it was. Just look it up. I think it's developer report and review process is not in this list. I think that's what it was. In any event, just look at the reference and you can find the answer. But all the other ones are they're correct. So you can go through and it'll actually it'll answer give you the correct answer, that kind of thing. So these are the actual test questions from a superset that ICC maintains. And if you go through this, I have this for the SIM. You go to the next one, it is for the Life Safety Educator here. How many questions did I have on that? I had 39 there. The next one was the International Fire Code. I think I had 101 there. International Building Code, only 20, and then I think there's 96 on NFPA 921. So what I'm getting at is there's weighted reference need to understand stuff. What I mean by that is you need to understand the IFC and NFPA 921 more than, let's say, the IBC, but I'll show you where the answers and references are to everything. All right, let's go ahead and let me show you how this test works, the test curriculum works. How this is set up is, if you look at it, just jump through here, go back to the main page. I give instructions over here on how this works. So you have to highlight the reference or otherwise annotate it. And even if you know the answer, you need to look up the reference. And you need to repeat this process for all these exams a total of 4 times. So if you know that a special inspector is hired and paid for by the owner, great. Look it up. Know that it's on page 4. You have to look it up every time. Now this is just how it works. If you go through this process, you'll learn how the layout of the code or supporting reference documents work. And then you can, if there is a question on there, you don't know where it is, you'll remember, oh yeah, hey, in the sim, the owner was the one that's, pays for the special inspector. So if there's a question similar to that, go to page 4 and you can find it. So there's a method to this process. It's actually a process, not just the questions, but these are literally the questions you're going to have on the exam. So let me just, now that you see that, I'm going to go through and let's just go through the sim really quick. And I'm going to show you, I want to show you what that is. So I'm going to go through the sim. Let's go through the Special Inspection Manual 2018 edition. There's only a handful of questions here that's on the test. I have these tabs at the top just because I've tabbed every single item. That way if I get confused in a test, I can just go to these tabbed locations and I know it's highlighted. And these are where 80% of the questions are going to be. It just helps you get through it. And this came about, I did this iteratively through people that have taken the test, my knowledge on the test, things like that. So it's been an iterative process in terms of tabbing this stuff, but I'd recommend you do that and then you can find stuff. So as I go through this, I'm trying to save you some time because these references correspond to the questions that I showed you on the practice exam for the Special Inspector Manual, SIM. So what you need to do is highlight this. So like page 4, I had 2 references from page 4. Highlight it and underline the answer right there. So it's paid for by the owner. Okay, the special inspector is hired and paid for by the owner, as an example. Okay, so just highlight the sections I highlighted, underline, and obviously go through and study other stuff on your own. But I'm just telling you, if you do this, you're going to nail off 80% of the questions. And what is pass on that? 75%. So I'm guarantee you're basically having all the stuff you need to pass if you just learn these references on this process. So I'm not going to read them all. I just want you to see. Just go ahead and highlight what I have, underline what I have. You're going to be a lot better off if you do that. As far as this exam goes, it's actually not hard. There's 80 questions and you have 2 hours to pass. What threw me a little bit was some of the nuances on NFPA 921, which I'll get to as part of this. I just want to slam this out. So NFPA 921 was a little challenging for me because they were nuanced. And that and the life safety or the Educator, which I'll show you. There was some funky stuff there that you had to dig down to find. But the sim stuff's pretty easy. It's straightforward. It's all from the highlighted sections I'm showing you. So if you just know these tables like 518, knowing the continuous special inspection versus periodic. So there's a difference here. You have to have continuous inspections for some stuff, periodic for other stuff. So I think I went over that when I did the commercial building inspector video from the IBC. It's basically this is basically from IBC. I think chapter 17 is where special inspections are on the IBC, if my memory serves correctly. But this just has a lot more detail in it. Let's see here. Slam this out. Yeah, sprayed on fire protection material is particularly important. You're going to have a lot of questions on fire protection material in terms of the thickness and bond, the substrate cleanliness, and the stuff like that. So just know that there's some special emphasis on soil surface conditioning for surface fire retardant or protective material. Let's see, fire stops, 2% of each of them you got to inspect. I think that was the answer in that question I created. Yeah, and that question 20 on that sim test, it was all three of these. That's what it was. I didn't have the negative. It said which one was not in this list. When you have questions like that, it's a process of elimination. Go to the section that has the list of stuff. So there's 7 basic steps to develop a special inspection program, right? So just go, the A, B, C, and D would have like, 3 of the 7. And then you're looking for something that's not in the list. That's how ICC sets that up. Okay, so let me jump into the next one now. Let's see, in this test series, we're going to go to Fire and Life Safety Educator. So this is an IFSTA document. Just pop this open. Let's slam it out pretty quick. Let's see, what did I have on this? 39 questions from this. Now, some of them, this is the thing that was tough about this. It was kind of nuanced. Some of the stuff you could guess on, but sometimes those nuanced questions, they could go either way. So it's a little funky, but like number of languages, United States since the 1980s, it had a huge influx of immigrants. So that's affected the languages spoken. That's obviously affecting our ability to adequately, convey information as an example. But it could be other stuff too, but that's the one ICC is looking for. Yeah, so there's the 5 E's, education, engineering, and enforcement. That was a question. It's like one of those lists, which is not in the 5 E's. So this is where the 5 E's are there. Need for credibility. The answer is credibility. You have to be credible as a trainer. So professional qualifications defined in NFPA 1035. I mean, forgive me for reading these. You can read them, but just go through and identify the things I've identified. You're going to, smoke detectors, clean gear, cleanliness of gear. Yeah, when you're trying to keep kids safe. Class D fires, metals. Yeah, over 65, smoking. They'd call the fire department rather than call something else. I don't want to get on the nuances of this. I could probably talk your ear off on just about every one of these topics, but man, it'd be kind of a waste of your time. Let's get through this, get you passing this test. Okay, date and time and location for the basic information about the proposed presentation. Talking about teams and coalitions here. Smoking is the leading cause of death. Blah, blah, blah. Flexibility is an important part of your lesson plan. Having a lesson plan with objectives are vital. You need to have an evaluation. Yeah, you got to be flexible and be willing to modify your plans. Take a survey to get additional information. Yeah, this took me a little while to figure out this one. Just keep in mind, creating a plan to address community risk. It had, there was 2 questions I think that came from this, but it was a little funky. There was identify, develop, implement, and evaluate. So I don't remember how the question was worded, but this is the kind of thing you're looking for. It's these little funky zones that they have. You have to kind of dig through, and it's not like an outline, in other words. You got to dig through multiple sections to understand it. You got infers. Know that there's different data available on the like FIDO or infers or whatever. Just be aware that there's different databases that have different data. That's what they're going to ask you on. But if you just go to the spots I've highlighted, they're not going to ask you for everything in here. Mainly, they're going to target on the stuff I've highlighted. So that's what you need to focus on. So CDC, you can get injury statistics. There's a reference for FIDO, Fire Incident Data Organization. So you can see some stuff here. Demographic data includes employment. And education, I think, was the other answer in that question. Strategies for successful learning outcomes. I don't remember the question on that, but just keep in mind, I had to find something there. That's why it's highlighted. Okay, prevention information, fact-based, locally centered, solution-oriented, population-specific. Then I had some underlined stuff here. I don't remember what the question was associated with that. Research before writing. You know, see, a lot of this is kind of just common sense, you know what I mean? But if you just go through and study the stuff in advance, so quantitative analysis uses statistical analysis to assess educational materials. That was actually a question I had right there. So some of this, it's fairly common sense, but here are the references in the book that they reference. So hopefully that'll help you a little bit. Highly credible. Credibility is something this book really emphasizes, the need to be credible. Sharing of information is important, community-based stuff. Juvenile fire setting. There was a funky answer. Oh yeah, the answer was fire department. It doesn't say it, but the fire department is the main focus behind eliminating fire setting, or fire setters amongst juvenile delinquents. So that was the answer, but it's not straightforward. It's kind of nuanced there. Curiosity is the main driver for fire setting and playing with fire when kids. Let's see, and then over here, bear with me for a sec. Okay, yeah, school-based educational programs is another piece that was important. So that's it for the fire and life safety educator. You know those parts, you'll get what you need. Let's see, the next book in the series in order was the fire code. I got a bunch of stuff in the fire code. Not all of this was for the FC exams, a problem, the fire code and standards exam. Some of this was from other exams I've taken. But I think, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe this is all FC. So here's something interesting. In the IBC, purpose is to set minimum. You'll see minimum or reasonable, and it'll throw you. So just go to the section 101.3. Fire is reasonable. Building code is minimum. Is usually how they set that up. That's the difference. It'll say reasonable in the fire code, minimum in the building code, and that might throw you a little bit, but just kind of know where you're looking at. So we're going to run through this really quick. I'm not going to read everything. I had like I said, there's 100, how many? Yeah, 101 questions for the FC exam from the IFC. So just take a look at the stuff I have. 5 years is a magic number for record retention. Shall never waive code. That's something the legislature has to do. You can modify it. Yeah, the fire code official is authorized to accept testing standards. I'm not going to read them all, but just take a look at what I have here. 105.5. See, it used to be 105.5.6. Now what is it? I'm still using. In my profession I use the 2018 version, but it's 105.5 now in the 2021 version. So operational permits, know this section, okay? 105.5 in the 2021 version. It was 105.6, I think, in the 2018, but just know 105.5 because there's a lot of stuff here, and I don't want to go into the nuances of it, but it's really important to know that a permit level quantity triggers other stuff. If you're below the permit level quantity, you don't need NFPA 704 signs, etc., etc. Now that's not going to be on the test, but it's just important to know 105.5 of the 2021 version. So you'll be asked questions potentially in all this stuff. So just highlight what I have, okay? That's what it comes down to. You'll be able to get through this if you highlight and underline what I have and it corresponds to the questions in the exam that I've created for you. Like I said, I'm not making money off of this, so I did 90% of the work on that exam, But that last 10% to make it all 4.0 and clean and everything takes another 50% of the time. I don't want to waste it. You have the questions, the answers, and the references. That'll get you there with some study. So it's you don't need anything more, unless you want to pay a bunch of money. Yeah, I'm happy to take your money if you want something professionally done. Combustible liquid. Always remember the difference between a flammable and a combustible liquid is a flash point at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I wish I had time to talk more about this. Understanding the difference between flash point and fire point is important. Some chemicals that have flash points don't have fire points, and they're exempt from certain requirements like Chapter 57 of the code. Just be aware of that. I don't think the FC test doesn't talk about that, but it's really important to know that. 2703, emergency control station. I have the reference there you need. Fireworks. Flammable liquefied gas. It's partially liquid at a temperature of 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Blah, blah, blah. Know that 75 feet above the fire apparatus access is a high rise. That comes up a lot. Know the difference between labeled and listed. You have an affixed label and something that's labeled. MOE, means of egress, exit, exit access, and exit discharge comes up every test. You're going to see that. I think I have a question on an I-4, an institutional group 4 for child care. They have caveats here in terms of the number there. I think that's what the question asked. S1 for the store. If you have like a warehouse storing level 2 and level 3 aerosols, it's an S1. Yeah, as far as the IBC, go through Chapter 3 on occupancy of the IBC, not the IFC. Occupancy is defined in Chapter 2 in the IFC and Chapter 3 in the IBC, okay? So what I mean by occupancy, it's really kind of important to know this. Let's see, occupancy classification. So they define it as a heading in Chapter 2, occupancy classification. And then all these pages are under that definition. Well, if you go to Chapter 3 of the IBC, it gives you all this in a dedicated chapter, and it's going to give you a lot more information. So it's important to know that. Okay, Class 3 standpipe. Just know where you... Know the difference between Class 1, Class 2, or the combination Class 3 system. I think I have a question on construction. Technically, you're going to have a standpipe in any building over 30 feet. You have to have it installed, though, once you hit 40 feet during construction. I think that was the question that was asked. Okay, ceiling clearance, general storage. You always need to be 18 inches below the sprinkler head deflector. That comes up. The measurements from the deflector, it's 24 inches if it's a non-suppressed building. And I want to be clear, FM Global has some different numbers, but for ICC test, it's always going to be 24 inches and 18 inches. That's what you need to know. Emergency preparedness requirements, Chapter 4. Chapter 4, there's some nuances with Chapter 4, but you don't need to know everything crazy hard. Just know where you need emergency plans, lease plans for mall, stuff like that for your emergency preparedness plan. Okay, fire service features. Fire apparatus, you always have to be able to access a building within 150 feet all the way around the exterior wall, the perimeter. That comes up all the times. Fire apparatus roads. Now this is different. There's an appendix I'll get to that has different numbers. It's like 26 feet. But for everything, it's always 20 feet wide, 13.6 high. You need to know that. And you have to have turning radiuses. There's an appendix that explains that. But just know these numbers are always come up. 150 feet, 20 feet, 13.5 feet. They'll always come up. Guarantee it. You need to know those. So distance, that's a hydrant, 400 if it's not suppressed. You can actually go to 600 if it's suppressed. But just know that 400 feet, you have to be within 400 feet of a building if it needs, if it's unsuppressed. So the deal is, I'm showing you these highlights. Just go through, highlight, and read them. That way, 90 days for like an extension cord, stuff like that. There's actually some other stuff here that's important to know. I don't think I saw them on tests, but you might get hit by RPTs, relocatable power taps. They're always going to come up right here, this section here. You might want to know that. But as far as the tests, I don't think there's ever been any RPT questions, but just know that's there. RPTs in this electrical section. Because I know there's more emphasis that's being placed on RPT safety. Okay, mechanical refrigeration. Let's see, testing, periodic testing. Yeah, manufacturer's instructions. Just read that. Let's see here. Let's see, doors, windows, and openings, horizontal and vertical, sliding and rolling fire doors. Yeah, fire doors. You need to inspect all fire doors and annually. Just go through and walk it down. It can be pretty simple. Just have to keep records of the inspection for 5 years. Fire retardant coatings tells you what NFPA standard to abide by. So chapter 8 is kind of important. It has to do with interior finish. This is how the Station nightclub killed 100 people. Interior finish is kind of it is an important topic. So understand the difference between Class A, Class B, and Class C interior finishes for flame spread index. You don't need to understand all the technical details, but just if you know this, you can get the answer. Textile wall and ceiling coverings. If you have like carpet on your walls, has to equal a Class A flame spread index. Period. Done. But there's other flame. I think I went through that in the commercial building inspector explanation just briefly. Okay, so we're getting into 903, which is suppression system. This tells you where suppression is necessary. Like if you have a Group A, Group A1 over 12,000 square feet, you need a suppression system. A5 over, let's see, yeah, A5 1,000 square feet type thing. So just know that this is where you have to have your suppression here. I think I went through and explained this in detail in that commercial building inspector presentation I did. So look at that if you want more details on the IBC. Although technically I'm going through really fast on all of this. And if you have any suggestions, I'm happy. You know, I've got quite a bit of experience in this field. If you want me to put together a video that targets a specific topic, I'm more than happy to do that. It helps me. And okay, this section 906 is for fire extinguishers. This table will throw you, okay? The reason it is, look at this. Maximum floor area per unit of A. See how it says per unit of A? You need a minimum of a 2A, okay? Well, what that says is you can do 6,000 square feet. So this is per unit of A, but you have a 2A, so it's 6,000 square feet. Always throws me because they'll ask you, the way they word it is, it's just kind of funky. I don't remember the exact question, but just very carefully look at this and don't lose sight of the fact that this area is associated with each A rating for your fire extinguisher. Okay? And you got to do the math on that. It will throw you otherwise, guarantee it. At least throws me. Maybe not you. You're smarter than me, I guess, but okay, 907, we're into fire alarms. Let's just crank this out. All this corresponds to the questions that I have. So the references are part of the questions I've already created in an online tutorial. So you can just go through that. But what I found, though, is if you go along with your 2021 IFC with this video and just put on super slow mode, and just highlight the sections I've highlighted before you go take the test, then you're not having to look up stuff and highlight and underline. It's already done for you. It'll save you, literally, it'll probably save you, 10, 20 hours of time if you do that. Well, 10 hours of time. Let's see here. And that's all I'm trying to do, is save you some time. So visible alarms in R2s. Right, 5232. Oh, this is eyes. Never mind. Anyway, just take a look at this. It tells you where you need emergency voice alarm communication, the tables, etc. Let's see here. It's worth pointing out, NFPA 13, suppression is designed to control fire. I mean, look, there's early suppression fast response systems out there, ESFRs, from NFPA 13 and also FM datasheet 326. But the reality is suppression is based on control, not suppression, okay? So it's based on the assumption that fire growth is halted at the time of sprinkler activation, not that it necessarily controls a fire. That's the premise for suppression. Even though 99.9, well, more like 80% of the time, it actually puts the fire out. But just keep in mind, that's the premise for it. I'm emphasizing that because that principle feeds into other concepts as you think about it in terms of other stuff. Okay, let's keep on going here. Okay, table 1004.5. I'm going to take a little bit more time and talk about this. This is probably the most misconstrued table out there. These are maximum floor area allowances per occupant, okay? People erroneously presume that you're limited to what's in here, and you're not. Let me give you a test question. This is an actual test question, okay? It wasn't on the FC test. I think it was the building plans examiner I took like in 2015. Maybe it was, or 2017 I took that one. But what it said was you had an aircraft terminal, 10,000 square feet with, I don't remember how many doors it spec'd. It spec'd a whole bunch of doors, okay? And it asked how many people are allowed to be in this airport terminal. Well, if you look just at this table, the table calls out, it'll take me a little while to figure it out. I'm not going to waste your time looking, but they have an aircraft area here somewhere. Airport terminal, there it is. So like baggage claim, 20 gross, okay? Or baggage handling, 300 gross. Or concourse, 100 gross. Well, that's not quite correct, because if you have a huge means of egress, you could actually drop that down to 7 square feet per person. And see, I'd have to look. I'm not going to just read through this. There it is, 7 square feet per person right there. So even if you're dealing with an airport concourse, let's say 100 gross, let's say it was a 10,000 square foot concourse, 10,000 square feet divided by 100 is 100. So what you're telling me is I'm limited to 100 people if I use this table. Well, what if I have like 30 feet of available exit access doorways? And technically, there's, in a sprinklered facility, it's 0.15 inch per person, right? So what is 24 feet would be, it'd be huge. I can't even fathom what that number is. Just, let's see, how many inches is 24 feet? Let's just 300 inches off the top of my head. Right, 24 times 12, 240, yeah, thereabouts. So let's just say 300 inches. Make the math easy. So 300 inches divided by 0.15, that comes out to be like 2,100 people. Your means of egress can support so much more than the 100 people that this specifies. So what I'm getting at is it's a combination. Let me use another example. My day job, I had somebody that was just crazy overzealous. They wanted occupant load signs everywhere. So they looked at this table, and every little conference room has an occupant load sign. I was sitting in his occupant load sign, looked up at the wall, it said 23 people. I don't remember the square footage. Let's say it's 800 square feet. It had 3 exit access doors, okay? You're talking 100 inches of clear access width, and they were diagonally spaced, the doors, and they were limiting that room to 23 people. Are you kidding me? It's ridiculous. So you have to apply some common sense, some HJ discretion, some engineering. The concern is crowd crush and pile up at an exit access door. Well, in that latter example, if I had 3 exit access doors, am I worried about crowd crush with 23 people? No, by no means. Absolutely not. So that's why you can go down to something different. That's why it has to be approved by the fire code official, or the IBC says the same thing, it's the building code official. So I don't want to belabor this, but just realize these occupant load factors are a minimum. Just be very careful in how you read section 1004. Don't be duped by overzealous oversight. Sometimes they get a little nuts. Okay, let's see here. Handrails, always 34 to 38 inches for handrails. And that's not guards, that's handrails. So it's a little bit different than guards. Guards are 42 inches. Stairway identification if you're more than 3 stories. High-rise building, standby power and emergency power, blah, 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 blah. Aviation facilities, ignition sources have to be 50 feet away from aircraft fueling operations. Emergency stop. So 23 is like gas stations. You have to have an emergency stop between 20 and 100 feet away from the dispenser. So yeah, spray finishing, like a spray booth, gives you some information there. Okay, fumigation, notify the FCO, fire code official, within 48 hours. And when you're fumigating, they want to have good control of that. Go back to 105.5 in terms of operational permits for that. Explosion venting, if you're going to have any dust. Industrial ovens, the surface temperature at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Use period for membrane structure. These are temporary membrane structures. I mean, you can get above 180 days. This is temporary tents. Okay, temporary tents are 180 days. A little bit different. Fire protection and life safety features. Let's see, what was this? Let me just... Where are we at? High-piled storage. Yeah. Now, be clear, high-piled storage is defined as storage like in a rack or a pile above 12 feet. That's where it invokes other requirements. That's what this section is. So just keep that in mind. It's pretty straightforward. It tells you if you need automatic fire extinguisher, fire detection, etc., based on the area of your high-piled storage. And commodity classification, Class A would be like, Class 1 would be like steel, Class B would be like non-combustible products and combustible packaging, Class 3 would be combustible, like paper inside of paper packaging, Class 4 would be like, a certain percentage of plastic, and then you get into high hazard, which would be like your Group A plastic, tires, things like that. So keep in mind, there's a section that'll define your commodity classification. You can look that up in the index, but that's how you find it. Yeah, here, if you're doing construction, so this is the construction. If you're, you have to install your standpipe before you exceed 40 feet during construction, so just so you don't burn down your facility. Okay, table 5003.1.1 parenthesis 1. For general stuff, if you're doing like Fire Inspector 1, Fire Inspector 2, this is a crazy important table, but they only ask you like a couple minor questions on the FC test. But just anytime they do that, always go down to footnote D and footnote E. What they'll ask you is the maximum of a hazmat stuff, whatever, like a Class 2 oxidizer. See how it says D and E there? Well, D and E is you can double it if you're suppressed. You can double it again if you're in a hazmat or flam cabinet, okay? Hazardous material cabinet. So instead of 250, it'd be 500 if you're suppressed. And if you're in a suppressed building with a hazmat box container, it becomes 1,000. So that's important to know. That's how it works. It's doubling every time it doubles. It's not adding, it wouldn't be, 250 plus 250 plus 250. It's 250 plus 250 times 2 type thing. That's how you interpret that table. All right, NFPA 704. Okay, look what it says. They're requiring a permit. Remember what I said in 105.5, why it was so important to know 105.5. That's the quantities that require a permit. If it doesn't require a permit, you don't need a 704 diamond. I don't think they're going to ask you that, though. Okay, so, yeah, just go through, look. In addition to the other table we looked at, 5003.1.1 parenthesis 1, they have some other tables for hazmat, number of control areas. Okay, so get this, folks, get this. if you had I think the question was, if I had a 2-story building, how many control areas total can I have? And the answer is 7. So you're allowed to three on the second floor, 4 on the first floor. Add those two, the answer is 7. That's what ICC is looking for. Okay, what's 51? I can't remember, is that aerosols? Just hang on a sec, let me look. I think it's aerosols, I just want to make sure. Before I taught, yeah, aerosols. So aerosols, keep in mind that section 5003, the table 5003.1.1 parenthesis 1, for total hazmat, my interpretation, how I interpret it, that doesn't apply to aerosols. Aerosols are separate because they have a separate table for storage. Level 2, level 3. So that's why they have a separate limit for aerosols. So just keep that in mind. Don't lump aerosols and normal like bottles of like alcohol into the same category. They're separated. Even though they're both hazmat, they're separate in terms of your max. Max is an acronym, MAQ. It's short for maximum allowable quantities. So if you hear people throwing up max, that's what it means, maximum allowable quantities. All right, let's see here. Yeah, distance between magazines for explosive storage. It actually does come up now and then. So we're in 57. Understand the definition of tank and container. It's really important to know the difference between tank and container. So when you're looking at stuff, keep in mind, know the definitions, because you'll automatically, if you read something, you'll see tank. Well, what does that mean? I think it's 660 gallons, and I think a container is 60. I have it annotated somewhere. I might have to look it up. In my 2018, I have it all annotated. But just keep in mind there's specific definitions for those, so don't get thrown on that. Okay, 150 feet. Let's see here. Missed one. Sorry, guys. I have all this tab to make it easy to find them. So, all right. Some more stuff. Maximum quantities, maximum allowable quantities, MAQs. Water reactive. And keep in mind, maybe I'll show that to you. I think it's Appendix E. It gives you definitions for various, what chemical actually is a water reactive solid. These are just generic titles. It always throws me. I have to go back and look it up. But they do give you some information there. Okay, it's really important. Appendix B, it's important to know fire flow. Now, there's no questions in the FC test on fire flow, but there might be. There always is in fire plans examiner, fire inspector. Just keep in mind you're allowed to derate 25% of these values if you're suppressed. Just carefully look at the footnotes, the titles, and before you answer it, read over here what these tables mean. Because if you're suppressed, it becomes a little bit different, but there's a certain minimum threshold. In other words, I don't need 6,000 gallons of water if I have a 50,000 type 5B that's unsuppressed. Technically, I only need, what do I need? Off the top of my head, I need a total of 240,000 gallons of water. What is that? It's 2,000 GPM. So I need 2,000 GPM. I can't drop below 2,000 GPM. And it says it on the other page, but what I'm getting at is just carefully look at this, otherwise you'll get thrown, okay, if they ask a question. The question I know they're going to ask is on hydrant spacing and locations. If you had a crazy high fire flow, like 5,000 GPM, like I just mentioned, which you'd never need if your facilities are suppressed. It's way more than you'd need for manual firefighting, but you need a minimum of 6 hydrants. And there was a question I had in this footnote too, so just make sure you look at footnote C. Average spacing, yeah, that's it. But I do want to just quickly look, in case there's questions, look at Appendix E hazard categories. It's not 4.0. It doesn't give you everything, but like a cryogenic fluid, fluorine, nitric oxide is cryogenic fluid. So it's going to give you a little bit of information to help you out. Okay, so that is IFC. In order, let's go to the next one. What was the next one? The next one in my list was building code. I'm not going to hit everything in the building code just because I've used this for the commercial building inspector. I use the same version. So B is commercial building inspector, but F, you see how I have an F there? That was a question right out, F and F. So these were questions from the FC test. So I have them all listed. I already stated I had 20 questions. There's not a lot. I'm not going to go through all of the IBC, but they were mainly from Chapter 1 through Chapter 4. I didn't see anything after Chapter 4 from the IBC. It was Chapter 1 through Chapter 4, okay? But I'll just quickly go through. You have FC there, FC, 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 FF is the same thing as FC. I got tired of putting FCF. FF, yeah, if it says B, I wouldn't worry too much about it. It's worthwhile to know, but I'm trying to actually give you the answers to help you get your certified fire marshal if you want it, just to help your career. There's probably a lot of stuff here I'm skipping, but let's just see if I can do it. It's only chapters 1 through 4. I think most of them were in chapter 1, to be honest. Remember I said chapter 3 is the occupancy? See how it's laid out? It's a lot better than the IFC in the definition chapter 2. So you have examples that they give you in chapter 3. So definitely look at the IBC if you're ever trying to decipher what the appropriate occupancy is. Just works out a lot better that way. Okay, let's just jump through. I think I just had a couple in here. F, there's one F, anchor building, means of egress, minimum width in a mall. Oh no, what is that? Is that a mall? I think that's a mall. Just bear with me. Let's find out what that was. 4.0. Okay. 4.02, yeah, it was mall. Shaft enclosures and buildings, always going to be important. Equipment room in 4.03. That was an F question. Yeah, like I said, you don't need to highlight all the stuff, but just where the F's are. So there's an F there. So a hospital distance within a room to an exit access door. Square feet for each ambulatory care recipient area refuge. And I want to keep in mind, so NFPA 101, it actually specs out 3 square feet per person for area refuges. So what we're talking about is an ambulatory care recipient, it's 6. So it's a little bit different in a hospital. Just keep that in mind. F right there, 8 inches. They have this on every test. Exit sign on amusement park, 8 inches from the floor. An illuminated exit sign. Very common question. I don't know why they like that question, but ICC loves that question. Fire escape, means of egress, tells you when you need a fire escape. So just read that section there. F, what do I have? Exceed 30,000 gallons. Look at that footnote in table 414.2.5 parenthesis 2. I had a question off the test for that, or somebody did in an event. B, corridors. This is like for a semiconductor plant. I believe that's what section. Let me make sure I'm in the right section. I think 415 semiconductor plants, right? I didn't pay attention. Yeah, so Yeah, well, it's H5 is a semiconductor plant, and we must be in the H5 section. So just be aware, it's really abstract. HPM gases are for semiconductor stuff. Just be aware of that if it comes out. Fire partitions for dwelling units, separating the rest of them. Okay, that's it. This is it for the IBC. We're not going to kill ourselves anymore. The next one is NFPA 921. So there's 96 questions on this one. It's nuanced. There's a lot of stuff that are subtle. Let me just run through this. You have to know NFPA 921 if you're going to pass this test. But I'm going to give you the answers. So just look at the highlights. You need to know fire patterns, flashover, ignition time, thermal inertia. Thermal inertia is, I'm surprised I actually have this here. It's defined in engineering terms. It's a calculated value. It's fairly detailed, but I'm surprised they have that there. But regardless, no thermal inertia. This is just how to conduct your investigation. Prepare, a lot of prep work, like what tools to bring, stuff like that. Just read the highlights I have here. Yeah, this is radiation convection and conduction. I'm trying to think what the answer was, though. It was not one of those. It was, I just can't remember. It was something funky. It was really obvious what it was, though. Okay, keep on trucking here. I think in the test, I may have referred to HRR, heat release rate, and heat flux. Flux is like watts, or it's kilowatts per square meter, the units they use here. But just know the definition of heat flux. It's like the heat you feel on your hand from the sun, on your skin. That's heat flux. It's an energy density, area density. That's what it is. HRR, heat release rate, would be like the overall amount of energy issued from a fire. Heat flux is the incident radiation from that fire. So you'll need to know those two definitions because they'll occasionally use that. I do have a series of videos I put together that I posted on this YouTube channel. I think it's one of the better ones. There's a lot of weaknesses in terms of arson investigation training. So I wanted to put something a lot more solid that goes through at least 6.3 and 6.4 of the 2024 NFPA 921. So that's available. I do have a video on how, what's the term, agglomeration, can't even say that word, but how that works, as well as annealing. If you've watched those videos, you'll notice I took images from this as well as other sources. So some of these are going to be right from this. So just be aware that I did steal some of these images when I did that video, those series of videos. This is biology, victim injuries. Anyway, just look. I'm not going to read it to you. My voice hurts too much to talk. Okay, patterns. Patterns are deceptive. They actually made some funky mistakes. I think they made some mistakes in 921 in not having, in fact, I'm not going to go through it, but the point is, it's not as good of images as I would have liked to have seen in this. They made some mistakes on their images that could be deceptive. But regardless, doesn't matter. Ionizing versus non-ionizing, optical, different types of smoke detectors. This might come up, OH1 versus OH2 versus EH1, EH2, and light hazard. I have a couple questions to talk about OH2 as a required, for coverage. This is a control mode density chart. This is the amount of water over a specific amount of area that is designed to control a fire, not extinguish it, but control a fire. And most of the time it does that. Actually, most of the time it puts it out. But just be aware, that's where the OH1, EH1 light hazard comes from right here, in case it comes up. I don't think it will, but I don't think they go into that much detail. They probably do in Fire Plans Examiner, but not in the Fire Codes and Standards test. Alloying of aluminum, spot alloying. Children and fires, curiosity, that was already asked in the Educator, the life safety Educator that we looked at. Law of jurisdiction, Miranda rights. This came up twice, Miranda rights. Now they cover this in the legal section of the Certified Fire Marshal test. There's 2 additional tests you need besides the FC. And they talk a lot about Supreme Court rulings and constitutional Bill of Rights, as well as Miranda rights. So be aware. This is something, though, that comes up in the FC questions. Because the reason it does is because this certifies you know how to conduct an investigation for arson. It means you have to know that Miranda rights are required for the people you're interviewing. That's why they have it in this section and not the legal section. The legal test, you know, they have it in the code section. Have had a real issue with how to define experts. How do you define an expert? It's very subjective in how you make that definition. But you can see just how much NFPA 921 is involved in the FC test. There is a lot of stuff here. I mean, this is crazy how many references. And some of these references, you know, multiple references go in the same question. Some of the references I did not create questions for. I didn't think it was necessary. So it's just good to highlight everything just in case you're in a quest for something. Even though 921, NFPA 921 is not necessarily required, if you're doing any kind of investigation and you don't use 921, the likelihood is you will be rejected, your testimony will be rejected in a court of law. So it's just you know, most municipalities reference it or recommend it. They may not require it, but if you're doing any kind of forensics, just follow the outlines they have in here. And this will get you get the CFM, even if you're just looking at the stuff I'm highlighting, that CFM says, hey, you know NFPA 921. And that's what a jury, a judge, prosecuting attorney, etc., that's what they're going to check on. That's why getting this FC test out of the way is beneficial for you if you are in the fire protection industry. So you'll if you go through, just read the questions before you highlight, you'll notice a lot of these questions or a lot of these highlights are right off the questions. It's just basically I just quoted them, a lot of them exactly as is when I made the questions. So it's pretty easy to get through. It's not impossible. Almost done with this. So that's another one of the videos I have, depth of char analysis from 6.3 and 4, but I did, you know, obviously use this section as well. But I think they reordered stuff, I think, in the 2024 from 2017 too. So some of these references aren't going to line up perfectly with the video series I put together. So levies, explosions. Let's see, fire department. Okay, folks, that's it. So as you saw, most of the questions are going to come from 921 or the Life Safety Educator. So just go through, highlight the stuff I highlighted, take those practice exams 4 times. It really is helpful if you know where to find it in the book by the time you're done on that 4th exam. But if you've highlighted and then you tab on top, you should be able to find them. And I want to be very clear in emphasizing, I'm telling you straight up, based on the interviews I've had, the people I work with, I even took some prep courses. I didn't take prep courses for all my ICC tests, but some of them I did. That whole process, when I go through it, and I want to be clear too, between tests, so like from one test to another, there's a lot of repeats. So I put all those together, made the highlights, from all that. It's 80% of the questions, and you need a 75% pass. Okay, so if you just go through the stuff I gave you, you should be able to pass. If you like a YouTube video targeting something, talking about, I don't know, NFPA 30 complications, or you name it, means of egress, just put it in the comments. I'll see if I can put something together. Hey, thanks for watching this. You have a good day.